Hi everyone, and welcome to Playtime Online. This is the Institute of Play's webinar series that allows us to connect and share our work with you. I'm Momna Siddiqui, the moderator of this program. Today we're giving you an exclusive look at GlassLab's SimCityEDU game prototype, a standards-aligned educational version of SimCity that supports teachers and students in the process of formative assessment. For those who aren't familiar with GlassLab, they're a nonprofit research and development effort working to transform formative assessment through digital games. GlassLab is a collaboration between Institute of Play, the Entertainment Software Association, Electronic Arts, the Educational Testing Service, Pearson's Center for Digital Data, Analytics and Adaptive Learning, among others. So there are just a few things to note before we get started. EA Maxis has allowed GlassLab's team to take the SimCity commercial game and adapt it for specific learning and assessment usage. While GlassLab and Maxis are wholly separate, this is a cooperative engagement based on a known interest in SimCity from educators. Now, let's meet our participants for today. Could everyone briefly introduce themselves? MJ, would you like to start?
Sure. My name's MJ, or Michael John, and I'm the game director at GlassLab.
Great. Greg? Greg, I think you're muted.
Hey, my name is Greg Bliss, and I'm a designer here at GlassLab.
Awesome. And Liz?
Hi, I'm Liz Klein. I'm a product manager at GlassLab.
Great. And Stone?
Hi, I'm Stone Labrandy. I'm the lead designer on SimCity.
Thanks, guys. And before we get started, I'd like to remind our viewers that at any point you'd like to ask today's speakers a question, just click on the blue participate text under this video on the right-hand side. We'll be spending the last 20 minutes or so of the webinar answering questions during a Q&A portion. So let's kick off today's discussion talking about the actual SimCity game. Stone, could you talk a bit about SimCity's design and the impact of its glass box simulation engine?
Okay, yeah, we started working on SimCity about 3.5 years ago, and right from the very beginning we knew we wanted to make a different type of simulation than the previous SimCity games were. So we created a new engine that we call Glassbox, and that was designed just explicitly just to run rich simulations. So one of the big features of Glassbox is that instead of simulating a city from the top down with a lot of buildings like previous SimCities did, we like to generate it from the bottom up. So every little agent, every little sim in the game has a unique personality. It's running around the city, it's trying to find work, it's trying to find a place to live. If it gets enough money, it will go shopping, kids will go to school. And so that whole simulation level driven from the bottom up gives this richness to the game that just never existed in the previous SimCity games. One example would be like the children in the game. So when they get up in the morning, they look for a school to go to. If they can't find a school nearby, then they'll look for a bus stop, and then they'll try to wait at the bus stop for the bus to come by. Eventually, if they get to school, they'll stay there for the day. At the end of the afternoon, they'll come home, either walking home or taking the bus again. They'll also play in parks if they can't find a school. And there's some relationships between what they learn at school and how your city will start to evolve. For instance, if all your kids are going to school, you'll have a lot less crime in your city than a city that doesn't have any schools at all. Another example is the police. So the police, they'll go to, Sim will go to work as a policeman. When they get there, they'll get in the squad car, they'll drive around looking for criminals, keeping the neighborhood safe. And if a crime does happen, they'll race off to that building, they'll try to get there in time. If they arrest the criminal, then they have to take that criminal back, they need to put it in jail. And that criminal's actually taking up space in a jail, which may be eventually overcrowded if you have a big crime problem. If the criminal escapes, then they do what we call leveling up. And so a shoplifter, if they escape, they might become a bank robber, for instance. So that kind of richness of every little individual criminal, student, police officer, worker, all starts to come through. And you end up getting a good sense, I think, when you play the game that it's really alive. That a lot of other SimCity games have felt like you're looking at buildings. It was very static. And this thing is always in motion, it's always alive, it's always very interactive. Last little part I want to talk about is just the philosophy that when we built the game up, or what we're really trying to achieve. And one of the main goals is the game was to educate people about invisible systems that would be in their city. So a good example of this is the sewage system and actually the entire water cycle that we have. So you have to pump up water from aquifers. It has to go down pipes. It goes into buildings. The Sims will use that water, but every time they do, it creates sewage, which then has to be pumped and put someplace else into the city. And so that whole water cycle of getting pumped out, getting used, getting converted into sewage is something that's normally invisible to a lot of people. You just turn on the tap, you get water, you take a shower, you're creating sewage, and so on. But by playing the game and realizing that you have to put all of these systems in place, kind of exposes something that's normally beneath our feet all the time in a way that you might not ever think about as you walk down the sidewalk. Another big design goal that we had was that there wouldn't be a right and a wrong answer for playing this game. We didn't want to say that you should always do, for instance, solar power and never do coal power. Because in the real world, there's a reason that we still have coal power plants and we haven't converted over to solar. One of the reasons, for instance, is that it's very cheap and very dependable, and it works 24/7 for us for very little cost and very little footprint. Where solar power in the game starts to take up a lot of your city space. It doesn't work at night. If you use wind power, the wind isn't always blowing. So you can make these trade-offs in the game. And that's really, I think, what it gets down to is that SimCity, it isn't a normal game where you win. It's not about winning, it's about exploring. And that's why I think it's such a great opportunity for kids to be able to play with it in a classroom setting, because we can set up all these scenarios, then the kids can explore those, and then have rich discussions about that afterwards.
Great, and would anybody like to ask Stone a question or add to something that he said? Nope. Okay, so Stone, I was wondering if you could be a little bit more explicit between the ties between SimCity and education. Could you talk to that a little bit more?
Well, the main benefit, I think, is just the ability for the kids to go in there and really start to dig in and make these trade-offs, or actually poke at different things and see what happens. Again, like, you can't really fail in the sense that it's going to say game over, you lose. You may have a pollution problem, but then you have to try to figure out how to solve that. You may have a crime problem, but you can figure out how to solve that. So this idea of saying, here's a puzzle, which you maybe created yourself, and then you're the one that has to figure out how to solve it. In fact, you're the one who has to even figure out what your goals are. So in the non-educational sense, we get a lot of players who want to build crime towns, for instance, or they want to build polluted towns just to explore what that may be like. But even in doing so, I think you learn a lot about these different systems, even if you're trying to go off in directions that may be not considered really healthy for your citizens.
Absolutely. And MJ, how has GlassLab leveraged the features that Stone just described to create scenarios for classrooms?
Yeah, sure. I mean, what Stone just described is really the essence of what SimCity is in a lot of ways. And it's been really, really cool to take that and think about how that would fit and how it would belong in a classroom. So for example, Stone was just describing the whole question of what type of power are you going to use. And we can create sort of more specific questions around that than what SimCity gives you, where you have a lot of different choices to make at every given turn. To kind of have kids ask that question in a more direct way. So there's a couple things around that. One is thinking, if you look at the new science standards, there's a lot of emphasis on things like human impact and how the environment is affected by the choices we make. And in addition, there's this concept of systems thinking or problem solving, and how is a student approaching a given question. And through the watching a kid play SimCity, and by that I mean using the data that's generated by the play, we can start to look into those questions of what type of inquiry is this kid using, what type of solutions are they exploring while they do the problem. The one thing that's been challenging is that Stone and his team created, I would say maybe what, 100-hour experience, Stone.
Yeah, depending on if you play out through the whole region or not.
Yeah, I mean that's not even conservative in some ways, but we need to figure out how to pack this into maybe 15 or 20 minutes for a classroom experience, so that there's a moment. First of all, just it has to fit within a class period, but even then, so that we have an opportunity for reflection even on what the experiences that the kid has had. So that's the main challenge that we've faced. But I really want to emphasize that it's been really great to work closely with Maxis, with having the code and having the ability to change it and just make these small adaptations so that it works great for this environment, as well as preserving what makes the commercial game so amazing.
Yeah, and I'd just like to add that it works both ways too, because everyone here at Maxis, we realize the history of SimCity and what it really brings to the educational framework, and so we're really excited that an outside group wants to take the game and really push in that direction.
Yeah, Stone, I know you guys have heard so many times over the years, just anecdotally from teachers on what they do with SimCity. That must be kind of cool.
Yeah, and I think one of our main sources of happiness recently has been groups of urban planners and architects have been really excited about this game, and when we talk to them, they say they were a kid, and when they were in school, they got to play SimCity. There was usually the one cool teacher who had a computer in the corner that they could come in after school and play with it, and that inspired them so much to be architects and urban planners to this day that they still have really fond memories of that classroom.
Yeah, that's awesome.
MJ, do you think you could show us a little bit of what the game looks like right now?
Yeah, I can show a little bit. Let me see if I can get the screen share to work. And what you're going to see is it's going to look really pretty much like the SimCity that you can go play today. Just go purchase it and play it. But what I'll do is I'll point out a couple of the things that are a little different and how those are specific adaptations for the classroom, kind of like what I was describing earlier. So hopefully y'all can see that. We talked about making a more specific scenario. So this is SimCity itself will let you play forever, and you're making your own decisions. But in order to sort of compress the time and to get kids doing something more specific, we created a problem that is, frankly, we create the problem just by playing the game for a while and then pausing it. But this allows us to have a kid do something specific. So in this particular case, we've got a city that's been growing, and it's doing really well, but it's having an air pollution problem. And the citizens are complaining, but they're not going to be happy with your solution unless you also are able to save jobs in the city. So this is obviously going to be a pretty subtle challenge for the kids to take on. So here we go. And maybe what I'll do to solve my pollution problem is shut off this coal plant and that kind of thing, but now I might lose my jobs. So I'll just pause this for a second. And the changes that you see is we've done a little extra work to expose the specific. These are all, this is all material that's in SimCity. We haven't added anything new, but what we've done is expose it in a little bit of a different way in order to emphasize the importance of it for the particular lesson that would be talked about also in the lesson plan here. And then also, just if you look at the bottom, we've simplified the interface quite a bit so that the kids stay focused on the particular task at hand rather than all the other stuff that SimCity gives you, which is amazing but is overwhelming. And when we've put kids in front of it, we found that they really do want to invest all those hours, which is great, but not great for a classroom. So simplifying it down is the other main feature that we've done. And then we've got like the idea here of saying, yes, I think I'm done with my work. I think I've solved it as best I can. And then the opportunity here, and we've talked about formative assessment as a feedback moment. Now right here, what you're seeing on this screen is just the statistics of what you were told was the important goal, and I obviously did pretty poorly here because I didn't try very hard. But what we're also going to do is use this screen to give the player, the student, some feedback about what we observed. Maybe you should have tried maybe a more diverse approach to how you took on the challenge of power. Or maybe you should think more carefully about how the system works to reinforce having more jobs, and you can't just destroy everything because your jobs go away. We can give that feedback also as part of this system. And we don't have that all built yet, so what you're seeing is a bunch of empty space. But that's really a crucial part of this, is that where you're going to get more feedback from the game than just how did I do in the game. It's going to be what did I do in the game and what does that mean. So that's what we've got to show. It's just it's SimCity, but it's adding a few things to make it more adaptive to the classroom, and that's really the point here.
Thanks, MJ. Does anybody
Sure.
want to add to what MJ just showed you? No? Okay, great. So let's move on and talk about SimCityEDU's teacher tools. Liz, will you walk us through how SimCity will be used in the classroom and some of the materials teachers will be able to use during class?
Sure, I'd be happy to. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. I have something I want the audience to look at here. Okay, so one of the things as MJ was describing is he was describing what the students would be doing during the game. But there's more to it than students playing the game. There's also the instructional wrapper, I want to call it, around the game. So there is a role for the teacher in leading students as they play the game. So really we have a 3 to 5 day learning sequence. And it begins with the teacher kicking off the lesson, setting up the learning objectives, and then students go and play SimCity. Here's really where they have hands-on time to solve those real-world problems that are in the Common Core standards. After students have their experience playing the game, there's some follow-up work that happens as a class. Much of the work is collaborative, some of it is independent, that really dives deep into the standards that are taught in each lesson. And then there's opportunities for the class to discuss, to refine, and that will help the students get even deeper into the game in the next session. So the challenges or scenarios, as MJ described them, are getting progressively more difficult as the students move through the game. I'm going to go to the next one.
Liz, can you actually walk us through what each of those bubbles say in case our viewers can't see it? Oh, no, it's fine.
So what it says is, it says each lesson tees off with a lesson introduction. Then there's a period of time where students are hands-on with the game. And to clarify, students are one-on-one with a computer. This often comes up. People ask, what are the kids in pairs? That they could be, but ideally they'd each be playing individually. Once the students complete their time with the game, there's some online learning tools that dive deeper into the content. And students are using those tools, talking to one another. And then finally, in the last bubble, it's time to debrief and discuss and get ready for what would happen in the next day. And there's some variation in what that looks like. So it's not always the same every day, but generally those are the main components. And I also wanted to clarify that our first game is for students in grades 6 through 8. I don't think that was said earlier. Okay. And specifically getting into the standards that are covered. So from the next generation science standards, the thematic topic is human impact on the environment. But there are also some cross-cutting concepts that are covered, specifically cause and effect and systems models. So students are understanding the parts of a system and how those parts of a system contribute to problems. And as well as in the lessons that the teacher is guiding, there's also some opportunities for argumentation and explanation. And these, for those folks who are familiar with the next generation science standards, a lot of this language is probably very familiar to them. In addition to what's in the science standard, we're also addressing some things from the grade 6 through 8 English language arts Common Core standards. Working with informational text is a huge part of the ELA Common Core, and it's so important for students to be able to read technical and scientific texts. So we've embedded that in the game, and we're specifically covering 2 standards, identifying evidence within a text and also using diagrams to get information. And what's tricky, one of the things that's been tricky for all of us here is if students are playing a game, how do you make that learning visible to the teacher? And so I'm going to turn it over to Greg now, and Greg's actually going to show the kinds of tools that we've created for teachers to show them the learning that's happening while students are playing. And there are two tools that he's going to go over. One is a tool that actually shows progress over time against the standards, and another is a mobile application that teachers can use while kids are playing that's going to point out how the teacher can intervene and help as students are having that experience. So Greg, I'm going to turn it over to you.
All right, thanks, Liz. So I'm just going to share my screen real quick. All right, so as Liz was saying, we've been working on designing two tools that can help teachers when they're deploying this product. So the first one we're going to talk about is this teacher dashboard, which I have a mock-up of right here. And this is just an example of one screen that we've been working on. This is a progress report. So we'll just kind of walk through what we're showing here. At the top, we have each of the standards addressed by the product, and the teacher can organize by standard, and below that, by how they'd like to view student progress in that standard. Now what we're seeing here is progress over time. So this gives teachers a visual graph of how quickly their students are progressing and where they currently are. So as you see these dots along these lines represents where a student would be in terms of progressing through competency of the selected standard at the end of each class period during which the product was used. Now these numbers here would represent sort of levels of competency within a given standard. A teacher could click on these and see more detail about each of the play sessions and sort the list in different ways. Now this dashboard would also be able to view things like game progress and completion. A teacher could use this to see work products that the student have completed during class time. So some of the tools Liz was mentioning, the online learning tools, those would also be represented here as well. Now, one of the probably more unique things that we're doing, as Liz mentioned, was the mobile app. So this is something a teacher can start on their smartphone during class when they're actually deploying the product and actually sort of get a window into what's happening on all of the students' games as they're playing. So they'll log into the mobile app, and the mobile app will push alerts to the teacher. And those alerts could be things such as, the student has disconnected, or the student is having trouble understanding how to use the mouse to control the camera, or this student is having trouble understanding a certain competency, anything like that. Anything from technical problems to assessment, all can be addressed here on this mobile app. Another important feature of the mobile app is that a teacher will be able to pause the entire classroom from their phone, or pause the game of a specific student. When the class is over, a teacher can shut down all the games remotely from their phone as well. So an alert gets pushed to the teacher's phone, and they can dismiss it, or they can click the alert to get a list of actions that they can take quickly on the spot. Now these could be a list of discussion questions to help walk a student through what they're struggling with. This could be a generated list of possible peer tutors. So if a student is struggling with a specific concept in the game, the mobile app can tell them which of the students have been handling that concept particularly well. It might be a good student for them to pair the struggling student with. Another thing that we can do is push specific content to a student who's struggling. So in the example I mentioned where a student is having trouble using the mouse, we could have a quest that the teacher could push to that student that would help them learn how to better control the game's camera. Now, in addition to some of those features, we'd have basic classroom management stuff, a student list that could show status, and a lot of settings to control, when are you alerted and how do you want the app generally to behave.
Awesome, thanks, Greg. And who else has access to this data? Can the students also see it?
Yeah, a lot of this data is going to be visible to the students through a dashboard for the students as well. Also accessible to parents.
Awesome. And is it a different interface, or is it pretty much the same thing?
The student dashboard would look a little different from the teacher dashboard. I don't have a mock-up of it right now, but okay. Yeah.
Cool. So let's talk about the play testing process really quickly. MJ, what has that been like so far?
We do a lot of play testing. We try to get at least one kid of our target age into the studio once a week. But right now, actually, we're doing some larger scale. We've got about 50 kids that are playing it. Some of them are here at EA using the EA test facilities, and some of them are actually at ETS as well using their facilities. That's, we always learn a lot from the playtesting with the kids. And this is, I would say that one of the things that's most kind of exciting for us and encouraging that we see very consistently from the kids is, this kind of goes back to what Stone was saying right at the beginning, is that SimCity is it feels so alive to them that it feels absolutely real. And they get really, really sort of captured by what's going on. And when we give them a problem, when we say, well, this city has too much pollution, or we actually have a bus stop problem like Stone was describing, they get really concerned. Like, I hope this kid makes it to school, or I'm really interested that they can fix the problem with the power in this city, or whatever it is. And that's been really, really exciting, because the kids kind of walk away from that with a strong impression of that they were given a real problem to solve that really mattered, rather than just being taught some kind of a lesson. It's been really successful. And then also very soon we're taking the game to classrooms and sort of looking at, well, when we have a whole group of students interacting in a classroom, how's that going to play out, and what changes might we have to make to either to the game, or even more likely to the other stuff that we've been showing today, to make sure that all functions, and keeps everything really smooth for the teacher.
Great. So this is a question for all of you. I guess your specific fields. What's left to do before the SimCityEDU game's ready?
A lot. The game in many ways is complete because it's SimCity, and that's awesome. But especially when we think about like the assessment, we have some very specific things that we want to understand about how the player's performing, but actually getting the models for that and getting them really functional takes a long time, and takes a lot of cooperative work with the experts at Educational Testing Services and Pearson to figure out how does the data we're getting out of the game correlate to those competencies. And there's just a lot of work left to be done on that. I would say that's our biggest open to-do list right now.
Mm-hmm. Anyone else want to add to that?
I will. This is Liz. In addition to all the things that MJ described, we're working on writing the lessons that surround the gameplay, also writing the informational text that support the game, and planning all of the other instructional activities. We're also beginning thinking about how we can provide a certain amount of professional development to go with the game, so that teachers would have an idea of how to implement the game successfully in their classrooms. So delivering that professional development via video or some other easy way, so that there isn't a giant barrier to entry. And then, of course, lots and lots and lots of details that need to be attended to.
Great. So we're going to jump into the Q&A portion in just a few seconds, but I think everyone watching is probably very curious when this game will be available. And also, I don't know if you guys have determined this yet, but what the expected cost per game would be, and if it's not available now, when they can expect the cost to be available.
So we're beginning pilot testing on the game this summer. So if there's anyone out there who's watching this and wants to sign up to be a pilot teacher, please contact Omna, because we are currently recruiting pilot teachers for the summer. But the game will be ready this fall in the August-September timeframe. We're still working on the pricing for the game, so I don't want to jump into that quite yet. That's to be worked out. But I will say this, our goal is to make this at very low cost. So it will be significantly less expensive when compared to the full commercial game, but we haven't finalized the price at this time.
Great, thanks, Liz.
Yes,
Sorry.
I just saw a question. I think I'll turn the question over to MJ, but I was starting to answer it, but I'll turn it over to MJ for the question that just came across the chat.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. So just really quick, I want to read. So I'm on the city. I want to remind everybody that. So if you are interested in participating in a field trial, just please email me. If you're looking at our webpage, I'm the community manager. So all you have to do is click on that link and just shoot me a message. So let's move on to the Q&A portion. So the first question is from Clay, and he asks, will there be any way to generate reports for individuals or groups of students in classes in order to quantitatively assess learning?
Yeah, I can take that, and that really is a big objective that we have, is to be able to generate these reports. It's interesting, the question also asked whether we would sort of roll it up for groups, which we don't currently have in the plan, although it's a very interesting question to say, well, how would we sort of cluster kids together and that kind of thing, and look at their performance. But yeah, the idea of looking at performance over time, and against these competencies is really central to what these products are, as far as where it belongs in school. And the dashboards that Greg showed are a big piece of that, and as well as what we're going to give back to the students.
Great. So the next question is from Audrey, and she asks, will GlassLab be creating a SimCityEDU game aimed at elementary school students?
So at this point, the focus of our grant right now for the next couple of years is on is for middle school students. So in the near term, we're not going to be creating any game versions that are for elementary students. But I think in the long term, it's definitely something we're thinking about.
So the next question is for Stone, and they ask, are there any other features SimCity has to offer that you'd like to see GlassLab adapt for SimCityEDU?
Yeah, there's a lot of features in the game, the commercial game right now, that have been hidden from the kids in this EDU version that I would love it if they got turned back on again, of course. Some of the main ones, though, are what we call the big businesses, which instead of running the city, say like at a mayor or a government level, you're running businesses and operations. So you may be a coal miner or a trader, or you may be running a tourist town, things like that. And so it's a different way of thinking about a city. Instead of all about government and civics and voting and things like that, it's more about the money side of it and the economics, which I think would be really interesting.
Great, thank you. The next question is from Francis, and they ask, how many student games is GlassLab making, and what learning areas do each plan to address?
I guess I can take that. GlassLab is a project that is bigger than just this one SimCity project. So we're actually going to be making a number of games in the coming years, and really covering a variety of different subjects and different games as well. SimCity is this amazing place to start, and it's kind of hard to beat. But we'll be using other games as well as a basis, and possibly even creating some on our own. What I can say is that what we do will pretty consistently connect to the Common Core as we move forward.
Great. Sorry, all of the questions are being sent to my email, and my email is acting funny. But I think, let me just get this is another question on the burner. Oops. So the next question is from Hillary. How closely does the SimCityEDU game resemble SimCity? Will my students feel like they're playing SimCity?
I would definitely say I hope so. I mean, The only thing that's different is there's a little less to do in terms of the interactive options, and that's for for obvious practical reasons. But when so I would say when I watch kids play it, they're viewing it as SimCity. Even kids that are coming in having played SimCity, the commercial game, they're really thinking that it's SimCity, and that really is the goal. We don't want them to think that it's something that's different. We really like them to think that they're playing the real game.
So there's a question from Kevin. What kind of hooks are you considering for other curricula that you'd like to use for some of your components?
So, obviously the human impact topic is, there's a lot to do, and the further we could do in SimCity. So within science, but also within social studies, social studies is one of the places that we want to turn to next. We've also looked at math with the budgets and other quantitative information that can be pulled out of the game. We think math and graphing is another one of the places that will go next. I'm just noticing a question on the chat right now. Amna, is it okay if I answer the question around Common Core?
Sure, let me just quickly ask it. Okay. So one of the questions is from Daniel, and he asks, how many Common Core standards will the game cover?
So the game that MJ was describing, our first game, is going to cover, within the Common Core, it's going to have 2 English language arts standards that are the primary focus for it. And the reason for just 2 is because we're also addressing the next generation science standards in that game. So that's it for the first game.
Great. And there's a question from Robert, and he asks, collaboration is a major focus in the classroom. While SimCity has the multiplayer features, will this be implemented into SimCityEDU?
Yeah, I can take that. The current way we have it set up is actually not using those same multiplayer features that you see in the commercial game. That's something that you have to have the commercial game to use. There's a lot of pretty cool infrastructure that works for that. What we are doing is looking at these puzzles and feeding it all back to a student, like Greg was describing, a student dashboard, and then having a classroom environment. So it's a bit different that way, where kids will be able to compare and discuss their different strategies, their different approaches. Just like Stone said, there's no right answer to these puzzles, and also their quantitative outcomes, and then go back and try again. And so it's more of a classroom-oriented thing than I would say it's a multiplayer thing in the game.
Great. So there's also a question from Steve, and he asks, is a teacher able to create the situation or simulation with some form of God mode, then save and distribute said simulation to all the machines in the room?
Yeah, no. Is the answer. It's a really great idea, but it would be extremely difficult to do technically.
Okay. So the next question is from Deneen. And they ask, do you plan on integrating more content areas to measure student mastery of skills and concepts as a student progresses through the game? So beyond science and the ELS standards that were mentioned.
Yes, yes. So we're going to make other ed versions of SimCity, so we will have future versions that will cover different topics. And I think, right now it looks like we're heading the direction of math as our next focus. I'm currently interviewing teachers and talking to a lot of teachers about what the needs are, and and what is difficult to teach in the Common Core that SimCity might be a perfect match for. So that's really how we're deciding what the next game will focus on, is based on the needs of real educators trying to adjust to the demands of the Common Core. And right now, all signs are pointing to math, but you'll have to come to the next Playtime Online to find out where we're heading if that turns out to be true.
Great. So the next question is from Rebecca, and this question is for Stone. And she asks, what immediate impacts do you think bringing SimCity into classrooms will have on kids, parents, and teachers?
I don't know from the classroom point of view exactly what's going to spill out of that, but I know from the commercial game that's out there right now, we've already received a lot of emails from parents and their children who work together at home, and they'll build up a city in a region, and they'll talk about it and they'll explore it. A lot of times they'll have two different cities, one for the parent and one for the kid. And one of the things that I really like about some of the stories that we've heard is how much of the gameplay happens when they're not even at the computer. And by that I mean they might be in the car on the way to school talking about the game, or they might be sitting around the dinner table talking about what they're going to do later in the day. So all of that, I think, will come from the classroom experience too. So what I would hope would be, of course, that the kids go home and they say, hey Dad, hey Mom, I would like to play this game with you. Why don't we get a copy for home use as well?
Yeah, I would just second what Stone just said. We actually have a term that we use that I'll admit that we borrowed from Jim G, which is there's the small g game and the capital G game. And especially with kids, this idea of I played a video game and then I discuss it with my friends and I have a whole environment around it. Like if you've ever seen kids talk about Pokemon, like they'll go on forever about their strategies and approaches to Pokemon. It's an example of how kids like to interact around it, and I think he's exactly right that having this experience in a classroom, because it's so rich and because it sort of creates so many questions, is going to have that effect as a capital G game experience for kids.
Awesome. So those are all of the questions we have today. Does anybody want to say anything else before we sign off? Nope. Okay. So for updates on Playtime Online, you can sign up on our mailing list. Just click the Join Us at the top of this page. We invite our viewers to keep the discussion going in our comment section. Join us for the next episode of Playtime Online, Wednesday, June 5th, as a group of artists and game designers come together to discuss games and art and how the two discourses inform and influence one another. Thanks for watching, everyone, and if you like what we're doing, please spread the word. Have a great afternoon. Bye, guys.